everybody, and welcome to the Fabled Upkeep. I'm your host, Freddie, joined by my co-hosts, Neil.
Hey, how you doing?
And Jared.
Hello, friends.
And tonight, we are going to be bringing you the much-awaited and Brew for Chevill, Bane of Monsters. Now, Jared, why don't you kick us off here and talk a little bit about Chevill, your new favorite commander, right?
Yeah, so Chevill is a black and a green for a 1/3 legendary creature human rogue, has Deathtouch. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponents control no permanents with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. And whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, you gain 3 life and draw a card. So he is a 1/3, and he's from Ikoria, so that was the set that was based around the different counter types. So Deathtouch is one of the counter types. But we're also dealing with bounty counters here, which is quite interesting. We haven't seen that type of an ability very often. So I found this deck to be quite challenging to build because we're kind of building our deck around a counter that doesn't really have a lot of support for it. Like there really just isn't much support for bounty counters out there. And so really...
I was saying, what was it, Neil? You mentioned that there's only one other creature that does that, right?
Yes, and it's called Bounty Hunter, I believe, is the only other one in Magic's history, I believe, that actually calls out a bounty counter.
Wow, that's Jared. Sorry.
And it's 2 and a black. Yeah, that 2/2, you can tap it to put a bounty counter on target non-black creature. And then you can tap it to destroy a creature with a bounty counter on it. So that's the Chevill and Bounty Hunter are almost the only two in Magic's history.
Chevill is really the Bounty Hunter. Don't let it fool you. He was really hanging out in Tempest a long time ago. He's just got a big hairy chest now, and his name is Chevill. And he haunts your dreams.
You're the mustache.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not the same guy, Bounty Hunter is definitely this deck's lieutenant, if it were to have one, for sure.
Or backup commander.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, if we're talking about Bounty Hunter for a hot second here, I don't really know if we're going to be using the Bounty Hunter's ability exactly to put bounty counters on creatures. I feel like we would just be using the secondary ability, which is just to immediately destroy whatever Chevill puts a counter on, because every time we collect that bounty, we collect 3 life and a card. So that's very significant. We could potentially be generating a lot of value with this deck over the course of a game. So we want cards that are going to allow us to do that pretty well.
Well, Jared, since you like when I disagree with you right off the bat, I'm gonna go ahead and disagree there with you and say that the Bounty Hunter's first ability, along with Chevill, is where you get the mass value. Or at least for my build, when I built this deck, I built a control-y mid-range, late-game kind of deck. I wanted to control the board. I wanted to have as many destroy effects as possible so I can bank on Chevill's ability. And if I'm able to get 2 of those in a turn, well, that's 2 draws, gain 6 life. Seems pretty solid to me. I understand that you're going to be able to kill something right off the bat with a destroy target creature with a bounty counter on it, but I'd rather be doing that with other pieces that we're going to be talking about here in the deck later. But I digress.
Yeah, no, actually that's a fair point. If you have a lot of specific targeted removal or, ways of clearing off your opponent's creatures, yeah, I mean, getting that additional life and the card draw, if you can do it, that's awesome. So
I just wanted to point out something too. When I was looking at Chevill and I decided and I shoved this down everybody's throat that we were going to build a Chevill deck, I was thinking that I read the card incorrectly and it was on every upkeep, not at the beginning of your upkeep. So, yeah, Chevill went from being pretty awesome to pretty subpar for me immediately. So I tried to find ways to get as much value out of him as possible while continuing on grinding the game to a win, which for me was okay, well, I'm going to be a removal-centric deck. And Bounty Hunter definitely helps you get a lot of value out of that.
So you misread the card. Well, I say challenge accepted, sir. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I only made our life a lot more difficult than it needed to be, right? I'm only human, guys. Just saying.
I think we're still going to make a pretty decent deck out of this. I was up for the
Yeah.
challenge, so let's see what we can do.
Yeah, so now that we got Bounty Hunter, why don't we keep going on the topic of making things die? How do we make things die in this deck, Neil? Why don't you start us off there?
Well, I think if we're going old school, and we went with Bounty Hunter, really, really old school, I think one of your favorites, Freddie, if I'm not mistaken, and one that we both enjoy, was Royal Assassin.
Let
That's
me
a classic that I used to play with.
let me point something out about Royal Assassin. Secretly, when we built this deck, this is why I built this deck. Just because I wanted Royal Assassin to have a home and to be good.
That's
Because
exactly
who doesn't?
right. Yeah, it needed to be a
I mean, look
legendary
at it.
creature.
Look at him; he's a sly little devil.
Royal Assassin, I thought that was a pretty neat card. 1 and 2 black. You can tap it. It's a 1/1. Just simple tap, destroy target tapped creature. And, obviously it's heavily dependent upon if other decks are playing creatures. But, and I think that's one of the things that I personally found very challenging with Chevill, is it's really heavily reliant on a lot of creatures being on the board, right? Because if you're going around that strategy of trying to remove all these different creatures, you're going to have a lot of them, right? And so in the background, I was also thinking, okay, well, what happens? Because I've played numerous games where I've done the Deathtouch thing. Well, what do you do with these 1/1s and 2/1s and 1/2s? Because they're never big. Right. The problem with these Deathtouch creatures is that they're never big enough to really bring that, when you get to that mid and late game, you have no oomph or anything to kind of close it out. Right. But you can sure kill all the single targeted creatures, right? You can, I can machine gun all these different things off the board. But after that's said and done, boy, it's going to take a long time to get rid of, 80 life from 3 or 4 different people. When you have a 1/1 and a 2/1.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, and there's no
tough.
doubt that you are going to control the early game with this deck for sure. I mean, first of all, Chevill himself costs 2 mana. I mean, that's ridiculously cheap for a commander.
Yeah.
Plus, all the stuff that we can use to trigger with him is also fairly low costed mana wise. So you're definitely going to be controlling the early game of the pod with this deck. That's unless you're playing with like some kind of crazy fast mono red deck or whatever.
I just want to point out a couple of quick equipments that our auto includes in this deck, and we can discuss them a little bit further down the road. But Deathtouch, you definitely want to be playing things like a Viridian Bow. Then you also want to be bringing up...
Yeah, 1 mana artifact. Equipped creature has tapped. This deals 1 damage to any target. Equip 3. So, yep, for 4 mana, you got yourself a tap kill target creature. Equip the Chevill. Yep.
My favorite for early game, and I know that y'all disagreed with me on this per usual, but it's okay. I love Heart Piercer Bow in this deck. Now, Heart Piercer is pretty awesome because it costs 2 and it's a very low equip cost of 1. So on turn 3, you could equip Mr. Chevill already with it, and it's whenever equipped creature attacks, Heart Piercer Bow deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. So I got Deathtouch. Oh, look at that. You dead. So you're essentially potentially clearing 2 creatures out right off the bat, or just putting pressure on the board right away and keeping creatures off. You want the Mana Dork? Can't have them. You want that 8-bear? Can't have it.
That's a fair point. I mean, in the early game, this card is going to be nice. My only concern with it is that as we get to the late game, it becomes less and less good. So.
Ready? Are you ready why this isn't so bad? We also have a lot of weenies in the deck, right? So I'm going to send in my potential 1/1 snake that Farika may or may not make if she makes a cut. And it's going to have a Viridian, or it's going to have a Heart Piercer Bow attached to it. And I'm going to swing in to your big, I don't know, let's go with an Inferno Titan because you love it so much, Jared. And it's going to deal 1 damage to it. And oh, wait, it had a bounty counter on it. Oh, I'm going to draw a card and gain 3 life. And then I'm still coming at you, so you could either block it or you could take the extra 1 damage. I don't know. I mean, it'll still play work. It's super cheap. Equip is what makes it so good.
It is very cheap, which is definitely a point in its favor. I was only just saying that my only issue with it is that it relies on the combat step, which can be notoriously, a little shaky. So
True.
It is a bit of a risk, but it is definitely something that could pay off nicely for you.
Absolutely. And then the good old Thorn Bite Staff. That's definitely an auto include in a build with Chevill, I think.
Yeah, I think this is the one that kind of turns it into like a goblin sharpshooter of sorts.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's pay 2 and tap, so you kind of have to have the mana open, but you can definitely shoot multiple things once it's on.
Yeah,
what
that's
are the other
definitely
pieces,
a cool
guys?
one.
So, just for the Thornbite stuff, this is one that after playing the deck personally, this is my first cut. And the reason why is because that is one of, that's an equipment that anybody who's been playing EDH for a long time, they see that, they ultimately are going to use removal right off the bat. They can't stand seeing Thornbite Staff because it's used to combo off with so many other different types of decks, right? So I ended up cutting this from mine because I wasted mana and I did absolutely nothing with it. And that the 4 equip and the 2 and then tap, and that adds up. That is a ton of mana. And I just never found an opportunity where I wanted to play, pay 6 and do that. So this one I didn't like it for my personal build.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very mana intensive. It costs 8 mana just to get the first effect out of it. So yeah, I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah. And I think I ended up out of sheer luck. There was only one card that I think I had that was actually a shaman. It ended up equipping it for free. Yeah. So that's great. I think if you had those synergies of that shaman.
What was his name? The Knight.
Well, I don't remember which one it was.
Knight.
Oh, yes, the Vampire Nighthawk. He's actually a shaman, vampire shaman. I didn't realize that. And so, yeah, it's great. That's a great feeling when you have it, right? And you can actually attach it for free. But still having to pay that too, it sucks. But the thing is that if you look at all the equipment that want to do the same thing minus Heartpiercer Bow, they all have that you got to pay 2 and tap it. And I ended up taking all of them out. I just didn't think that was where I needed to be. Deathtouch alone, I think the fight mechanic is actually a little bit better, like with an Uvenwald tracker, maybe a little bit better, because that's naturally what green wants to do is fight. So I kind of was thinking that's probably the way that I needed to go instead of using these equipments.
Sure.
But
so
that was kind of something I was
what
thinking.
would be the package for the fight package that you throw in there?
So obviously Uvenwald Tracker was
That's
one
the
of
MVP
them.
of MVPs.
That's definitely an MVP, which, even that is I wish it didn't cost 2 to do, but it's really,
it's one and
it's
one
2,
and green, yep.
2 and tap. But you could also do stuff like, I think it's like Ram Through, and there's a bunch of different like green cards that you can kind of play that do that fight mechanic.
What was the one from
Pounce.
M21?
But that's one way that you can do it. But again, I think with Chevill, if you're going down that same road that you were kind of talking about, Freddie, that removals thing, I think there's a ton of great enter the battlefield things like Ravenous Chupacabras and Murderous Riders and, Noxious Gearhulks that kind of provide that same type of thing that we're wanting to do. And they require 0 artifacts or equipments to make that work.
Right.
And another thing, if we go back to the tap artifacts that we were discussing earlier. So I actually had Uvenwald Tracker in my deck. I think it's a really awesome card. But I leaned more into the things like Viridian Longbow because if you have cards like Seedborn Muse, now you're in business. Now you're killing 4 things a turn or turn cycle at the table. So that's what I was thinking because these untapped type of effects budget-wise aren't that expensive. So there's also a card called Quest for Renewal. So that's kind of like Seedborn Muse. Just whenever a creature you control becomes tapped, it gets the quest counter. But you only have to do it 4 times, and then you have a Seedborn Renewal for creatures. So it's kind of the same thing.
Ooh, that is quite fancy. I love it.
Yeah, you could also do Awakening, which is 2 and 2 green. At the beginning of each upkeep, untap all creatures and lands. But it's okay if your opponent's stuff is untapped because you're just going to kill their best thing anyways.
I like where you're going with this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and then I even included stuff like 1,000-Year Elixir. So that's the one that you can activate abilities creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, and you can Pay 1, tap it to untap target creature, so you get 2 kill triggers off of it. Now these are a little more mana intensive, which I guess is why we were looking at also at the fight mechanic, because even though it might be a kind of a one and done sort of deal, it gets it done faster and more efficiently. So,
Yeah,
but for
I like to look at it also like for, I don't know, for 2 mana, it's 2 mana, draw a card, gain 3 life. That's
I mean, and that's not necessarily a
Yeah,
bad
okay.
thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So, I mean, we could go either way with it. So
why don't we go, Neil? I think you were talking about removal again, spot removal, like Ravenous Chupacabras and things of that nature. Why don't we get that package going too? That definitely gets our boy Chevill online and killing.
Yep, so I put Ravenous Chupacabra. Obviously, we talked about the Royal Assassin earlier. Murderous Rider was another one that I kind of put in. That's just a
good old
classic
Murderous
card. Yeah, that's a fine
one. Another one that I found that was really interesting. I always wanted to build a deck around it, but it was difficult, just like this deck was Tetzimok. Yep, so Tetzimok Primal Death, right? So that one has a nifty one. It's meant to be in your hand, right? Whenever this Elder Dinosaur, the black one, was probably one of the worst ones released in this set, along, what was the red one? Atali, right? So you had Atali and all these other great Elder Dinosaur. Well, black kind of got, they didn't get the best one. They got Tetzimok Primal Death. And basically he's 4 and 2 black. He does have Deathtouch, but it kind of goes with our Deathtouch theme. But you can play 1 black, reveal Tetzimok, and basically he puts this prey counter on target creatures, right? Now you can only do it on your turn, but you can essentially keep revealing this Elder Dinosaur from your hand and put little counters on creatures, right? And then whenever you feel like you've done enough, you can actually then play him, and then he destroys every single creature that you put a prey counter on. It's kind of neat.
If I'm not mistaken, this is also repeatable, right? You can just keep revealing them, or is it one per turn?
Absolutely. You can keep revealing them on your turn.
You just kind of peekabooing his way
You can do it as many times as you... Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah. So I found this one. This was just kind of a fun one that I threw into my build just because it was a card that I've always wanted to really try to build around. And it was tough to have him in the command zone because you had to get him back in your hand before you could do anything. So it kind of fits with this.
Yeah, I have him in my build too, just because we're going to go with the Deathtouch theme on this one. And it just seems like it's such a cool effect. So we should try it.
Yeah. And then I had like Noxious Gearhulk. I just like that creature, the Menace. It would be nice if he had Deathtouch, but it was one that I kind of liked. And then Freddy, I think we should probably talk about the best creature.
Which best creature is that, sir?
That's also 6 mana.
Oh,
There's only one creature that costs 6 mana.
My best friend, Grave Titan. That's my boy.
Well, wait a second. This doesn't have a Ravenous Chupacabra effect, but wait. It's got Deathtouch, so we do have to consider it. It's a nice end game. Nice end game thing for us to Deathtouch on.
Yes, I knew I'd find a deck. This is really another reason why I wanted to build this deck. Secretly, I just wanted Jared to appreciate Grave Titan for what he is.
So it was really a Royal Assassin and Grave Titan
deck.
It
was. But I just wanted to continue on the package real fast for the removal that you were talking about. How about like a good old-fashioned murder? Murder made it in my deck. It's pay 1, 2 black, destroy target creature.
Well, if we're going to play murder, why don't we just play Hero's Downfall? It's the same thing as...
definitely play Hero's Downfall.
Played Assassin's Trophy. That's one.
But I don't know. The thing with murder is that it just seems so inefficient to me. Like, I'd rather, if it had a body on it, I'd consider it, but I don't know. I don't think I would play murder in my build.
It's important, but spot removal in Chevill equals, like I said before, it's spot removal plus a card draw and gain 3 life.
That is correct, but we could do it cheaper, like, for example, Snuff Out.
We could with Snuff Out, of course. Nothing wrong with the Snuff Out.
I mean, we could include murder for now, but I do not think it's going to make the cut.
Speaking of Snuff Out, and I'm going to have to give you props here, Freddie, because one card that you definitely told me to bring in, and I know was crucial in numerous games that I played with this deck list was Force of Vigor. That card, I tell you, cheating mana costs, obviously one of the most powerful things that you can do in EDH for sure. The ability to exile one green card instead of paying its 2 and a green at instant speed, man, I tell you, that is an excellent, excellent card to have, and it did work, especially in the games that we played. I think this is an underrated card. People forget about it. Obviously, you're going to want to destroy things not on your turn, so being able to exile something from your hand and not pay that 2 and 2 green is an excellent card. So thanks for that.
That's a great addition, and also being able, again, being able or needing to hit artifacts and keeping people under control, since we are a control deck. I think that was definitely a nice little add. And then keeping on into theme here with that, let's jump into Acidic Slime. I know it's a little expensive, but being able to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land, I kind of like that. It is a Deathtouch creature. I don't like that it's on a 2/2 body, but I had it in my deck.
I'd have to be interested to hear what Jared's thoughts on this one. I thought this was too expensive for me.
Oh, yeah, I mean, normally Acidic Slime falls into the what my normal opinion of Grave Titan is. Yeah, I used to play Acidic Slime way back in the day, right, when Commander was first...
Which was actually probably just yesterday.
Yeah,
way back was yesterday for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Acidic Slime used to be amazing because it was like this nice little catch-all creature that just left a body for you. But nowadays it is kind of pricey. But in this deck it's got Deathtouch, so it actually synergizes with a lot of our stuff. So it's worth considering.
And I'm going to piggyback this into the Mac Daddy for this deck of amazing removal. And that's Casualties of War for 1 extra mana. 6 CMC, yes. 2 black, 2 green, baby. Destroy target artifact, creature, enchantment, land, and planeswalker. Why not destroy it all, baby?
I don't care how much this card costs. It could cost 50. I love playing this card because when you hit every single one of those things, that is a good feeling.
Card. Yeah, I don't know about 50, but yeah, I like the enthusiasm. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, Casualties of War, I haven't found a deck that I play that it slots into, but I did put this in my build too, just because, yeah, it fits in with what we want to do with Chevill so nicely, which is just picking off the single target. Even though, like, this card in specifically targets multiple things, we're looking for, like, those targeted removal where we can cash in on the bounties that he's putting out on these creatures.
I'm gonna just jump into some more removal, but this I'm jumping into a realm of planeswalkers. I just wanted to touch base on some of the Veraskas of the world. I love me some Veraskas. Now, Veraska the Unseen, high mana cost at 5 CMC, I know, but it's destroy target non-land permanent with -3. That's obviously situational if you're going to be able to defend it and keep it on the board to then be able to use its other abilities, which is +1 is until your next turn, whenever a creature deals combat damage to Veraska the Unseen, destroy that creature. Or -7 is create 3 1/1 black assassin creature tokens with whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Holy smokes. Never gonna happen, but one can dream.
Yeah, I don't think that it's ever going to happen very often. I've seen it go off once, and I've actually seen somebody lose to the token, which was, I guess, funny at the time. But it was literally once in like the entire time I've ever played EDH. So,
hey, but it did happen.
It did happen.
But this is more for the spot removal of target non-land permanent. Again, into the Acidic Slime theme. It's Vraska. She's awesome. I like her. I just play her because it's Vraska. Might not make the cut, but I just wanted to point that one out. I do love me some Garruk Apex Predator.
Hey, another huntsman to join Chevill on his hunt.
The Apex Predator is the 5 black-green, and it's the one that does destroy target planeswalker for +1 or +1 and put a 3/3 black beast creature token with Deathtouch onto the battlefield. -3 destroy target creature. You gain life equal to its toughness. Really, really, really good what we're doing. And then obviously Garruk Cursed Huntsman, because I like me some wolves and a emblem ample +3/+3 overrun effect. Pretty good if you're able to get it off. But yeah, why don't we get into the meat and potatoes of the creature package that's in this deck? Or if anybody had any more planeswalkers that they wanted to add. Figured I was the only one that liked.
I think you added Cursed
Yes, I
Huntsman,
did.
right?
I didn't know if you guys had any more Planeswalkers that you wanted to add. Maybe some mono green
No,
Planeswalkers.
I didn't add any Planeswalkers to mine. I'm not, Planeswalkers are iffy sometimes. They do draw a ton of hate.
Oh wait, there is that one Veraska that is uncommon from War of the Spark, and I can never remember her name.
Vraska's
There you
Eminence.
go. I do like her.
The problem, so I originally had Vraska Swarm Eminence. I thought about it, but I don't know if it does enough, right?
Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on it. It's pretty good. Assassin creature
Yeah, it
tokens.
makes them 1/1, a 2/2, I guess.
Creates 1/1 black assassins that have Deathtouch. Solid. Doesn't have spot removal built into it.
But the problem with these, it doesn't have spot removal. And second, these uncommon ones, you can't ever plus up, right? So unless you're doing some type of proliferate or something like that, and this build really wasn't, I didn't go down the counter route. It was an easy cut for me, but I know you like Planeswalkers.
It's like Veraska.
What about you, Jared? Did you have any other creatures?
For creatures, if we go back to, the ravenous chupacabras of the world, so some of those that I found were nice. Bone Shredder. So I really like that one just because it's so cheap, even though it has Echo. That's okay because if you're killing something with a bounty counter on it, you're getting a card for it anyways. And then we have let's see, Necrotal, which is kind of like the original one. So that's the 2/1 with first strike, and then when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. So it's a little more limiting. I think Bone Shredder is the same, so those cards are a little more limiting. But if you're looking for something with a body that kills something, you've got it in those cards. Also, Shriekmaw. I really like that one because you can either evoke it just for 2 mana, which is really awesome, or you could play it out as the creature if you want. And then I thought that Kogla the Titan Ape would be a fun addition to the deck because you can protect Chevill with it. You can return, the Chevill the human to your hand and give Kogla indestructible. So I thought that was kind of cool. Plus, it's a little bit of artifact enchantment removal. Plus, it's a little bit of fighting things. So, yeah, I think it's a nice card in this deck.
So I just added this one to my deck because that synergy of returning. So there are a couple of things that I naturally go to whenever I play green, and that's usually I kind of lean towards the 2/2 green, the Temur Sabertooth. So originally I thought, okay, let me play Temur Sabertooth because there's definitely creatures that I kind of want to return to my hand. And then I was looking through my legendary creatures and I was like, oh, Kogla is actually a very good card. It returns Chevill, like you mentioned. It kind of gives that ability to destroy artifacts and enchantments, which is just awesome. And it's a 7/6. That is game ending at the end of the game. I mean, that is some power, right? So I went with Kogla. I thought that was a really good pick for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything like super powerfully, but it has a lot of nice abilities stapled onto it for the stack. So I think it's worth including.
One that I added I went with Big Game Hunter. Kind of going along the lines of, because it has that madness ability. I thought that was kind of nifty.
Yeah, if we think about this for a second, so Chevill draws us extra cards. There's a very good possibility that, if we go to our end step, we could have over 7 cards in our hand. So we discard this guy and we get a free kill off of it. Wow, that's pretty sweet.
That is pretty awesome. I like it. Also into some of the Deathtouch synergies package that this deck needs, and so desperately desires. The first one I really wanted to touch base on, which synergizes extremely well with Chevill, is Witch of the Moor Jumpstart. She's pretty awesome. It's a pretty decent body. It's a 4/4 for 5, but it's got Deathtouch, and it says at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, which you do with Chevill, right? It says if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty amazing. I definitely did like that. Ogre Slumlord, another great one. That's whenever another non-token creature dies, you create a black rat token, 1/1, and rats have Deathtouch. Sounds good. Harvester of Souls. Never go wrong with Harvester of Souls. Non-token creature dies, drawing cards. We like drawing cards, and we like killing things. And how did y'all feel about Thorn of the Black Rose for this deck?
I thought it was nice. I included it in mine.
Thorn of the Black Rose, I really like it. Becoming the Monarch, can't complain. I like it.
Yeah, Monarch is a great mechanic. I love including cards that allow us to put it into games. I think it's really fun. That's a nice dynamic to the game that you don't normally see.
Empire Nighthawk, yeah, baby. What about what's his name? Aetherborn, Gifted Aetherborn, the Hooded Blightfang. Since we are in the Deathtouch theme, we kind of have that aristocrat thing going, right? Lose a life, gain a life whenever we attack with Deathtouchers.
Yeah, I put Hooded Blightfang. That's always that was recently given to us. I like it. It's pretty cheap. It's a 1/4 and provides a little bit of life gain. And then what's also nice is if there are planeswalkers that we're trying to get rid of, Hooded Blightfang does almost the exact same thing that Questing Beast does whenever it attacks a planeswalker. Basically, destroys that planeswalker no matter how many counters it has on it. So I put Hooded Blightfang along with Questing Beast just because Questing Beast is just good. It's 4 and does wonderful things. It 2 and 2 green, Vigilance, Deathtouch, Haste, can't be blocked with creatures with power 2 or less, and combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented.
How about Orin Frostfang? We haven't touched base on that one.
It got really good because it's also a snow creature randomly, so everybody's trying to brew it with some of the Kaldheim cards that are coming out. But yeah, I mean, it gives everything Deathtouch, and then whenever any creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, so it's an amazing draw engine too.
Viper was really great just because it's good to kind of sneak on somebody. That little flash Deathtouch snake, that's always great.
You didn't find
Archer.
These type of cards to be a little underwhelming? I mean, they seem more of a limited card.
So because of the strategy that we can go in, especially for my deck, it's okay to have these because I went really heavy into Overrun and beefing my creatures up later. That way they provide that early game advantage, and then later on when they kind of really suck, I can beef them up and do some damage as well. That's why I kind of went down the Overrun type abilities later on for my strategy. So yes, because that was the first thing, right? You go with these Deathtouch creatures, but the problem is that they absolutely are garbage later in the game. They do nothing. And they end up half the time just sitting there, right? Yeah, you got this Ambush Viper, whoop-de-doo, it doesn't do anything. So, I was trying to think another thing that we can go in later. That's kind of why I picked the card Champion of Lamholt. I also thought, well, if I could make them unblockable, that's also pretty cool. So I went down that road with the Overrun as well, with Champion of Lamholt, because that's a pretty powerful green card, but we can talk about that later. Any other Deathtouch, Freddie or Jared, that we're missing? Oh, I did miss one. And, well, I guess it fits into a different part of it too, but another Deathtouch that I really enjoyed was Sidisi. Sidisi Undead Vizier was an excellent creature card to have in this one, because also it's a 4/6, but it also provides that tutor effect for pretty cheap. So I like that one. It did a lot of work for me.
Yep.
4/6, 3 and 2 black. You can exploit it. So if you need to get rid of something else, or you can get rid of itself. And I also went with a heavy recursion in mine because I did like to have the ability to get some of these things back. And whenever you exploit a creature, you get to search your library for a card and put it into your hand.
Yeah, so DC is an amazing card.
Speaking of recursion too, I went with another one that, depending on if you go with a build with a lot of artifacts or not, but it's Glissa, the Trader.
Glissa, yeah.
I think that
she's a
classic, and she does do some work if you do have that. If you do have a good amount of artifacts that you might want to recur, some of your equipment pieces that are important, that she does put in the work to keep those back on the board. Whether or not she makes it in the final cut, we'll see, but that's definitely one. One that we haven't touched base on yet is also I like it. It's it's kind of janky, but it's pretty dang good. It's Hornet Queen. I like me some Hornet Queen.
I love Hornet Queen too.
It's just 7 CMC. If you want to talk about bad, if you want to look at that one, Hornet Queen and a Grave Titan, yes, it's flying, but I don't know, man. That's oof. He's expensive.
It
He's
is
like
an
good
expensive
old.
card.
He's good old Betsy. Your Hornet Queen, I bet for you is like Grave Titan is for me. You just love it, and it feels good.
I ended up cutting Hornet Queen, yes, because it was 7.
Yep.
You know, and I do love Hornet Queen though. It's so good, and you know that's one thing that we have to be cognizant of is flyers. Flyers can really do some damage to us. So it, you know, I also had to balance that as well, like to be able to have creatures that both had Deathtouch and that reach ability is actually
Kind of relevant.
you know, it's nice to have
For all the Magdas in the world.
you know, for all those dragons that we're going to be facing, you know, you got to be able to block them, or angels. You know, if you're going up against a white deck, you're going to have some angels
I
that
would
you're
love
have
to
contend
smack
with.
you around a little bit.
True.
I don't know how you guys felt about this one, but I really like him. I did build a mono black deck around him at one point in my life, which is Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
I actually am a big fan of this card. I think it's really cool. It's a really neat effect.
A neat effect. I really love it. I think it's even neater when you build around it. I don't know if he's going to make the cut for one of the 99 in here, but it does fit the 2/3 Death Toucher, and you are able to go and steal something out of somebody's deck. Oh,
That's always fun.
which is always fun. It's always a good time.
It's a terrible,
Especially over
horrible
spell
feeling
table,
to
right?
have it done to you, but it is good.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't really played with or against Gonti due to the pandemic, but yeah, I mean, in real life, Gonti is super fun.
Like another Death Toucher that kind of fits along with Sidisi was Vargoth, Bloodsky Sire. One of those new ones, 2 and a black, allows you to boast and basically demonic tutor. I thought he was kind of interesting to put into this deck too, because he has Death Touch, but also to try that boast ability to see how it played out. You know.
Yep. Yeah. Just to clarify, it would be like a vampiric tutor since it puts it on top of your deck.
Yeah, vampiric.
But still really good. You know, not discounting it at all. It's still a really nice card, and one that I didn't think of just because it's from the new set, so I didn't consider it.
Yeah, I put Vargoth in my build as well. I think it's a great little card. Something that's not from Keldheim, but from the previous with Zendikar Rising that I thought was a great little card for this is also Nighthawk Scavenger. Going to talk about a flyer with lifelink and death touch. That one's a pretty good one. Power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards. That's the same as a Vampire Nighthawk, but a better one.
Can get a little bigger.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Yep.
I definitely enjoy him. He's cool. Let's just jump into some of the finishers for this deck. Also, what was the big finisher for your deck, Neil?
So I guess finishers or win cons. The thing that I want, there's a few, right? So I went with obviously the new one from Kaldheim was Finn, right? Finn the Fangbearer. I'm not a huge fan of poison and or infect. I'm not a fan of that, so I was reluctant to put Finn the Fangbearer in here. But it is still difficult to actually achieve with him because it's 1 and a green. He's got Death Touch 1/3. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counter. You still got to get 10. The Death Touches creatures still need to get in and actually do something.
You need to have,
and obviously when Finn's out there,
connect per player.
People are. Yeah, it's difficult. So it's not a. There's it can be tough to make this happen. So I was okay with trying this one out. I also, like I stated earlier, went with overrun effects, right? So specifically in staying in the creature side, I was very fond of Kamal, the new one that we got from Commander Legends, and the Heart of Krosa, right? He's a little expensive, but he was kind of, I didn't want to do the, Crater Hoof Behemoth win, right? Because everybody does that. So I went with Kamal, Heart of Krosa, which is 6 and 2 green, legendary creature. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn, right? And then you can also pay 1 and a green until end of turn. Target land becomes a 1/1, which has vigilance and indestructible and haste. So I guess if, we're playing green, so we got a little bit of, we'll probably have a few lands by the time that we play Kamal. So I thought this was an interesting way to finish the game as well, because he provides that definite overrun ability.
Well, this is why we play Commander, right?
And then, right, exactly. Anybody who plays with me, anybody who plays against me, I love to, use combat as a way of going in and actually finishing the game. It's definitely a more difficult way of winning. Combo and all these other types of ways that you can win is definitely a lot easier, but I choose to usually stick with combat. And then the final way I did was Revel in Riches. I figured that one was probably never going to happen, but, it's good to, if it stays on the board, we could probably essentially get enough treasures to win on our upkeep.
Yeah, that is nice.
I do like it in this deck. Wow, I didn't even think about Revel in Riches. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, that's pretty good with considering we're trying to kill everybody's board every turn, all the time. Like clockwork.
Absolutely. So those were kind of what I thought. I don't know. What did you come up with, Freddie?
So the big two that I came up with in my deck, well, one you already talked about was Finn, because I really wanted to try him out, Fangbearer. But the big one with all the things we're killing, I went with an old goodie, which is Rise of the Dark Realms win, or all about win per se, but usually it's game breaking if you land a big beefy Rise of the Dark Realms on the board. Hard for people to come back from unless Cyclonic Rift you right off the bat, and that would really suck. But I really enjoy this card. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to fill the graveyards and then take advantage of it and bring everything back. Those were my two big ones that I had in my deck, and just overall grind fest and just make people want to not play anymore. I hate to say it. That's what Chevill feels like.
Yeah, with Chevill, you're definitely going to be controlling the game, at least in the early game. Even towards the late game, you do want to try and control the game, right? But at least cards like Rise of the Dark Realms, they allow you to benefit from all the creatures you've been picking off. So that is quite nice. That's not something that I thought about for mine specifically. One route that I like to go is always the Living Death route. So, and I think Living Death is really good in this deck, for the reason being that we have a lot of creatures that when they come into play, they destroy other creatures. So it's almost like, okay, well, we're going to get all our creatures back, but we're going to make sure to pick off all of yours that we don't like when we do bring them back.
I do like Living Death, yeah.
Yeah, and then another one I included was called Overseer of the Damned. So when it comes into play, you can destroy a creature, but whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, we create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So now we're amassing an army based on all the things that are dying. And, you combine that with something like Kamal, and there you go. There's your win right there, just attacking with a bunch of crazy 5/5 zombies.
Ooh, sweet.
And how you fill the graveyard is you use cards like Greater Good, right? So you just sack a creature, just draw the cards, discard the cards. You can even include like a little reanimation package, include cards like Reanimate or other potential things like, Journey to Eternity, Atzel, Cave of Eternity, that can bring your creatures back. But yeah, that was one of the things that I was thinking for my deck, to have like, a reanimation package that's kind of included with that.
That's a perfect example of what you'd want to do to win out of this deck. Do we have anything else, Neil, that you wanted to add for finishers or wins?
No, I'm good.
So everybody could agree here that bottom line, a Chevill build would be a mid-rangey control-based deck, trying to oppress the table and get as much value out of the pot removal that we're able to hit, to continue to stay on top and close out the game with a big finisher like a Kamal or an overrun effect, and or a big reanimation spell like a Rise of the Dark Realms. Yeah, I think this is pretty good, ready to go. Anybody have any other things that they'd like to add?
No, I think the deck's good, and like Freddie said, the strategy is we're going to definitely be looking to control the early game pretty heavily, and that's going to lead us into a late game where we're just going to be getting more and more value off of our Chevill triggers, and our opponents are going to be able to keep on their boards. So our game plan is to just, keep building up our board state, and, the things that we pick off, hopefully that we can use them ourselves in the future with cards like Rise of the Dark Realms. And yeah, I mean, it seems like a fun deck to me. I would be excited to play it.
Oh, that brings us to a conclusion of Chevill Bane of Monsters live brew. I hope everybody had a good time. Thank you for tuning in. We are, again, the Fabled Upkeep, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Everybody have a wonderful night. Take care now.
Yeah,
Thank
see
you.
y'all
Bye.
later.